Not we. You.
Hate is a very exciting emotion.
He wasn't just another face in black and white film reels. Glenn Ford was once the most trusted man on the screen. From playing selfless fathers to steady lawmen, he seemed like the kind of guy everyone wanted in their lives. But behind that, calm gaze lived a man battling contradictions the public never saw. Fame didn't save him from loneliness, and love never anchored him where he needed it most. Glenn Ford's story isn't one of scandal or spectacle, it's something more haunting. He was adored by millions but couldn't hold on to the people closest to him. His name dominated box offices for years. Yet, in his final moments, his own son had to go to court just to keep him alive. What happened to the Hollywood golden boy? And why did he vanish from memory so quickly after death? This isn't just a biography, it's a window into the quiet collapse of a man who seemed untouchable. A tale of love that never materialized, a family left behind, and a career that couldn't protect him from himself. You've seen his films, maybe even loved his characters. But what if the real Glenn Ford was more tragic and more human than any role he ever played? Born in a small Canadian town with a name fit for royalty, Gillen Samuel Newton. Ford Glenn's bloodline traced back to presidents and prime ministers. But when his family moved to California in 1924, everything changed. Beneath the Santa, Monica's son, a quiet boy, discovered the thrill of becoming someone else on stage. It wasn't just about acting, it was about hiding. And Glenn got very good at that. Hollywood didn't welcome him with open arms at first. He was rejected by studios, mocked by directors, and told he had no talent. But he pushed through. Columbia Pictures finally took a chance in 1939, and it came with a chilling wager. Studio boss Harry Cohn picked Glenn and William Holden, saying, "One of them will make it. The other will be eaten alive." Glenn survived, but at a cost. He rose fast. Gilda, The Big Heat, Blackboard Jungle. He became the symbol of reliability, the man next door, the unshakable lead. But while audiences saw strength, Ford was crafting a mask, a carefully built persona made to be everything he wasn't. Hollywood loved the image, but Glenn, he was already becoming a ghost in his own life. Their chemistry lit up the screen. But what happened off camera was even more electric. Glenn Ford and Rita Hayworth met as rising stars, then reunited in Gilda, where every glance hinted at something deeper. It wasn't just acting, it was personal. Over 4 decades, they were each other's almost, never quite finding the right moment. They never married, but they never truly parted either. When Rita bought a house in Beverly Hills, Glenn built one right next door. A secret gate was installed in the back fence. No words, no headlines, just quiet understanding. They had breakfast together, sunbathed in silence, lived in a bubble the public never saw. He was her safe place, and she was his constant. Even as fame swallowed them both, their hidden world remained untouched. Years later, when Alzheimer's stole Rita's memory, Glenn stayed by her side. He didn't make speeches or chase cameras. He just cared quietly. When she died in 1987, he walked behind her casket not as a lover, not as a husband, but as the man who loved her longest. In Hollywood's history of dramatic romances, there's maybe the most heartbreaking of all because it was real, and it was unfinished. While Rita held his heart, Eleanor Powell held his name but never his full attention. A dance icon at the peak of her career, she gave it all up to become Glenn Ford's wife. They lived in a 22-room Beverly Hills mansion, yet barely shared a life. Glenn slept downstairs, Eleanor upstairs, and in the middle was their son Peter watching. A family silently fall apart. It wasn't a marriage, it was a cold arrangement. What made it worse wasn't just the distance, it was the betrayal. Glenn recorded over 140 secret tapes with starlets like Marilyn Monroe and Judy Garland. While Eleanor raised their son alone, Glenn chased affairs and vanished into work. There were no screaming fights, just years of unspoken absence. Peter would later say, "He didn't talk to my mother, he didn't hug me, he just appeared," and then vanished. After 16 years, Eleanor filed for divorce quietly. Glenn didn't fight it. He didn't even stay in touch with Peter, who grew up with little more than a support check and a father on movie posters. Even when they worked together on TV years later, Glenn treated Peter like a co-worker, not a son. And that emotional absence would haunt both of them until the very end. In the twilight of his life, Glenn Ford's health crumbled. Strokes stole his memory, his strength, and finally, his independence. He was no longer the star, the icon, the on-screen hero. Just a man in a wheelchair, slowly fading. During this time, he lived with a private nurse named Pauline, someone he trusted completely. But trust, as it turned out, nearly cost him everything. Peter discovered a chilling detail. Pauline had placed a do not resuscitate order on Glenn's hospital door. Glenn was still lucid, still wanted to live. But she'd been written into his will while his own family was cut out. Peter went to court not for money, but to fight for his father's right to stay alive. It wasn't just a legal battle, it was the final confrontation in a lifetime of distance. After the court overturned the DNR, Glenn asked Peter to move in. Not as a nurse, not as a helper, but as his son. For the first time, Glenn looked at Peter and said, "Do you remember when you were little?" It was clumsy, late, and heartbreaking, but it was real. In that moment, a father who had failed finally tried to make things right, and a son who had waited decades finally heard something close to love. Glenn Ford never chased headlines. He didn't have meltdowns, scandals, or tabloid wars. Maybe that's why Hollywood forgot him so quickly after he passed. No grand tribute, no campaign to revive his films, just silence. But for those who saw him on screen who felt something, in his quiet stare he was unforgettable. He wasn't the boldest or the loudest actor. He was the one who made you feel something real. A teacher in Blackboard Jungle, a worn-down cop in The Big Heat, Superman's adoptive father in every role. He gave us stillness, honesty, and grace. He wasn't just playing characters, he was revealing pieces of himself. Pieces even he didn't show to those closest to him. So if you've ever watched Gilda, ever felt moved by a subtle glance or a heavy silence, then you already carry part of Glenn Ford's legacy. A man haunted by contradictions, admired by millions, yet unable to love fully in private. His was a life that never screamed for attention, but once you look closely, it's impossible to look away.